Thanks, Jerry. So we thought we've done quite a few sessions of Ask a Chef with Crystal, with Culinary Confidant. And we thought it would be fun to do some more workshops where people can ask some questions, learn a little bit about something that maybe they don't know a whole lot on. Um, so we figured maybe do Ask a Beekeeper. I had done a workshop for beekeeping last year. Actually, it turns out it was exactly this day last year, outside and in person. And so this year, since we didn't want to risk an in-person workshop, we thought this would be the next best thing. So a little bit about me. I have been backyard beekeeping for about 5 or 6 years now. Why I got into it was, number one, we really do love honey, but really because of I was reading all of the concern about the honeybee and how it really needs our help right now, and really is something that we rely on, both honeybees and other pollinators and native bees as well, to even create the food that we eat and really have the ecosystem be sustained for us to even live in it. So it's a really important thing, and that's kind of why I got into it. I ended up taking a class through the Downers Grove Park District and learned all about it before I jumped into it. So I would recommend that if you are interested in doing beekeeping yourself. I would maybe seek out some courses where you can really dive deep and ask a lot of questions, because there's a lot to learn. I'm still learning something every day, and every time I go out into the hives about bees, about how to beekeep well. So no one's perfect. I will tell you too, I'm going to try to answer all of your questions as best I can. I will say though that I've been told many times by my own beekeeping mentors that you ask a beekeeper, 10 beekeepers one question, you'll get 10 different answers. So I may answer something one way and another beekeeper may answer it something another way. And it's really kind of personal preference, as well as bees are wild. So this isn't like dog training or training, a pet type of thing. We're not training anything. We're just trying to manage and kind of make sure that they're healthy and give them a place to live. So, yeah, so anytime you guys have any questions, please let me know in the comments section. I will do my best to answer them. And first, I thought I would go over a couple of my tools that I use when I am out there beekeeping. For one, I have half of my suit on. As you can see, this covers a lot and gives me a lot of area on the side too to see. I like this one. There's a couple different kinds of suits that you can really get. I like this one. It's kind of like a fencing suit, but it's because it has the flat front, which gives you a little bit better depth and way to see into the hive when you're kind of looking in there. And anything that gives you the best mobility while you're doing this is great, because you're kind of leaning over this hive, and when you open up the hive, it's about, it can be from like 10 to 20 degrees hotter in the hive, because the bees are all creating a ton of heat with the way they're moving around, the way they're flying in and out, the way they're storing everything. It just creates a ton of heat, which actually that's how bees are able to survive the winter, that they actually are constantly moving. Their numbers will go down in the winter for the population size, but they'll basically kind of ball up into one big bee ball and just constantly move a little bit to create heat, and that's kind of how they don't typically freeze to death, even when we have polar vortexes. If bees don't survive a winter, a lot of times it's actually because they didn't find the food that you may have left for them. Since they ball up in this area, they may move to the right, but you left food for them to the left, and they didn't find it in time, and it's very sad and not great when you come back out in the springtime and see that your hive didn't find the food that you wanted. But in general, naturally, they do survive, and in a set hive setting, they're in the hollows of trees. They're kind of like hiding. Some people would find them in their deck or even their house sometimes, unfortunately. They do have areas where they're going to be wintering and surviving the cold, even up here by us. So the first thing that I wanted to show off that people usually really like is my smoker. I try to use this as little as possible. It basically, what you're doing is you kind of I put like pine needles and dry leaves in here. So you want something that's going to be really smoky without too hot. And I also put in some fresh grass, actually, to make sure that it's not going to be too hot. Um, they they react to the smoke not because they're afraid of it, or well, they actually act because they're afraid of it, but it doesn't necessarily calm them down. Like I think that a lot of people do think that you use the smoke to actually send them into the hive. They actually think it's maybe a forest fire or something coming after them, so that they may need to prepare to leave and go somewhere else in a short period of time. So they actually go in and start kind of gorging themselves on honey to make sure that they're prepared for a journey in case they need to go anywhere. So that's another reason why I really don't like smoking the hive too much. It does let them know, hey, we're coming into the hive to check things out. So you can kind of focus on eating rather than what I'm doing. But I don't want to stress them out too much. I see I got a question. Is it expensive to have a hive? I would say the initial startup of a hive can be a little pricey depending on if you're doing one or two. But once you have a hive, you just continue to use the same things over and over again. Even when you maybe unfortunately have either a hive that or a colony that swarms and leaves your hive or has passed away, you can reuse all of the frames and everything that's in the hive, even the honeycomb that those other bees had created and built out. The new bees will come in and move right in and be like, hey, it's already a furnished apartment. We'll just keep going and build it around and change it up how they want it. But it's actually nice that you don't start over every time. So I can't remember exactly how much our hive cost. I did get a kit, so then I actually they give you like pre-cut out wood to create the boxes and the frames, and then I put it together and painted it. But I want to say it was around like $200, $300 total. But again, I've had this now for 5 years and using the same exact things. When you are getting a new hive, or a new colony, I'm sorry, actually, if you want to check out, if you're interested later, there's a video that I did when I got my new colonies this year. They come in a little box. It's a 3-pound box of 10,000 bees each, plus one queen. And so that a 3-pound box is about $100. And then your queen's probably like 15 to 25 because she's kind of the most important part for creating your colony. You do need that queen, so she's a little bit more pricey. But then again, once you have this stuff, you don't really need to keep adding more things once you keep going. And then, do bees actually use the honey they make? They do. Actually, honey is their food. So that's actually one thing I really try in the fall when I am harvesting for honey. I try to take the least amount possible that we get some honey, but leaving as much possible for the bees so that they have that food. It is their main source food and is the best food that they can have and most nutritious food for them. So we keep as much in the hive as possible and then just take whatever we think is a little bit of an excess so that we can enjoy it ourselves. So yeah, the next thing I have, these are just tools for to get into the hive. So this is a hive tool, very complicated name. It's kind of just like a knife or a crowbar. So when the bees are in their hive, they create a lot of burr comb, which I wanted to give this to. I can't tell if you can really see how detailed that is, but so they will build comb wherever there's open space. So when your hive is built, the way it's set up is that there's only a little bit of space between certain things so that the bees don't actually cover it up and build comb between, so then kind of like shutting you out of the hive itself. But when I go in there, like I just cut off this burr comb the last time I went in the hive to make sure that the queen was doing okay and that the bees were doing okay. They're just basically trying to, build as much storage as possible within the hive. So I just take turns or take care to clean it out when I see it. So then also the queen isn't laying eggs in those kind of spots that I know I'm going to have to clean out later. And then this is just a bee brush or a brush that I keep. So this is both for when I'm actually in the hive and there might be a cluster of bees that are covering what I'm trying to do. And I try to, as gently as possible, kind of brush them away. So you don't hurt them, you're just kind of getting them out of the way and they're not going to be, squished or anything. And then I also use the brush after I'm walking away from my hives, because some, bees are flying all over the place when you're in the hives. A lot of them just like to like hang out on you. They're not mad or anything. They're just kind of crawling around. So before I start taking off my beekeeping suit, not that I think the bees are going to sting me, but I don't want to squish them when I'm like, folding up my stuff. So you just kind of give yourself a nice little brush down to make sure that you don't have any stragglers hanging on to you. How long does a colony typically live? So it depends. So it's interesting because a single bee, honey, like female worker bee, lives about 6 weeks, but it really depends on what time of year and what's going on. Um, if you think about a bee as more kind of like having only a certain amount of energy to spend in their lifetime, like a battery or something, that's kind of more how I think of it, because if a bee is born in the spring or in the summer and they are foraging, they are flying, they are protecting the hive, they're doing so much stuff all at once. They have spending a ton of energy to create the honey, to protect the queen, and all that. They will kind of go through their energy life cycle more quickly. But then when you get to the end of the year, they've the queen has laid a new kind of batch of uh, worker bees at the end of the year, and they've been hatched, and they're there to kind of protect her over the winter. They're not out flying and foraging as much. They're going to try and get as much as they can, whatever's left in the fall. But they are there to basically survive the next 3-4 months, depending on how cold it is that year. And they do. So, they just are slowly, like I was explaining before, they're just kind of slowly moving so that they are creating heat and staying alive and eating whatever they can, but they aren't spending that same amount of energy so that they can actually live longer. The queen herself, though, so basically her role is literally just to lay eggs. Leaves the hive once to go mate with some drones, which are male bees, comes back. She basically doesn't leave after that. She just lays eggs day in, day out, and that she's not spending as much energy, and she's a bigger bee. So she can actually survive up to like 2 to 3 years. It all depends again on what's happening. If your hive swarms, you might be getting a new bee, or the colony itself actually pays attention to how the queen's doing. If she's failing and she's not laying the eggs that she needs to be, or whatnot, they may start creating a new queen from the brood that queen has laid, and they create the new queen by deciding this egg is going to be a queen, and they are feeding, once it becomes a larva, they feed it more. It's actually called royal jelly, which some women use it actually in cosmetics. They're fed more royal jelly than a typical worker bee, so then she gets longer and bigger than the other bees, and that's just how she's just kind of chosen to be that bee. I think there's another question. What happens if another queen tries to enter the hive if there's already a queen? So there can only be one queen. And queens do have stingers, and they most likely will not sting you because you probably won't be seeing a queen bee outside of a hive anyways. But that stinger is meant to fight other queens that they battle to the death. So let's say they're looking to swarm. A swarm is actually not, the term in general, when you think of swarm, it's like this crazy, scary, hectic, like, group of bees coming at you. Well, it is kind of chaotic, but it's actually the most docile bees will ever be when they are swarming. So when they swarm is there was too many bees in the hive itself, and they decided that they need to split in half their colony. One goes with the old queen and to find a new hive. The other ones stay here in this hive and raise a new queen to live on. So once they start raising a new queen, they actually have insurance. They start raising like 4, 5, 6 different queens. And so the first queen to hatch, though, she'll go around and then kill the other queen cell when they're still in their little cells, so that she will be the only queen. What else? Oh, and I just have some gloves as well, which are really dirty. But so the other thing that bees create when they don't just do the burr comb, they have propolis, which propolis is also sometimes harvested for health benefits for humans. But propolis is basically like crazy glue. they will plug it up. Like if there's any crease in the hive, if there's like anything like the roof to the hive, I always have to use my hive tool to kind of like jimmy it open because it is sealed with the propolis. And um, it's sticky and it's hard to get off of things. So that's why you just keep using the same gloves. And these are leather in the bottom part, and then like a canvas on the sleeve part. Um, I actually, knock on wood, have never been stung for 5 years now of beekeeping. I always have my equipment on me and try to be careful with it, but other people who have helped me out while beekeeping have been stung though, but it's usually by accident. It's one of those things where you accidentally like rolled a bee while you're moving something around and it gets angry and then comes back after you. You have to make a honeybee angry in order for it to sting you. So um, in general, if you're getting stung in the summertime, it's usually not a honeybee. It's going to be something else, like a wasp or a different kind of bee or a hornet, that sort of type of thing. Um, so I guess the one of the main reasons, or why a lot of people keep bees is, of course, the honey. It is delicious. Local honey is really good for you. Actually, that's why you want to make sure if you can get local honey, like at a farmer's market, or even, I mean, even our local, some of the stores around here, I think at Pete's and at Mariano's, they do sell local honey. And why that's good for you is because those bees have gone to the flowers and plants in our area, in our region, to pick up the pollen and nectar. So those are the things that you might be allergic to or might have exposure to, rather than you might have pollen and nectar of something outside of our area that you just may have no idea that you're allergic to. It may, the honey, and it may affect you. Not saying that we would have like an anaphylactic shock, but that's just the benefit of having local honey, is that it's the local pollen and local allergies kind of in the area, so that does help. Clearly we love honey. We use it with everything, with some tea, on some toast. Also, honey actually does have some healing properties as well, as in that it kind of helps keeps things to not be infected. Our vet, actually, we had an unfortunate incident with one of our cats. She got bit by a very strange bug. We still don't know what it is, but she had this kind of a wound that it was on her neck, and it wasn't an area we could wrap or do something with. And so she actually had us clean it out every day and then put honey on it. And the honey actually kind of protected the wound from any other germs or dirt getting in there, and it healed perfectly. So it was nice. We had our own supply of honey at home without having to even go get any for her. Let's see. Are there any local predators of bees you worry about? So yes, not that I really worry about. If I was a professional beekeeper and had like a much bigger group of hives or colonies, the biggest thing I would worry about is actually other people. It's really weird. People go and destroy hives, like push them over, kill everything. That's something it's strange in the beekeeping world. It's a business thing, and it's a scare tactic thing for professional stuff. So for me, usually people like to stay away from the hives, so I don't have to worry about that. My neighbors are great, and they always ask me about my bees. They're happy we have the bees, but everyone is very respectful of our hives itself. But one of the animals that we do have to watch out for are skunks. Skunks I'm sure they like the honey too, but they actually like the bees. So they will stick their little paws into the bottom opening of the hive and try to get the bees and just eat the bees themselves. There's when it's springtime or it's not summertime, where there's a huge the population boom in your colony. So in the springtime you might have 10 to 20,000 bees, but during July, August, even end of June, where there's a ton of foraging and there's a ton of activity in the hive, their population numbers will shoot up to about 50 or 60,000 bees in a colony. So before they get to that large number where they may not have that many bees to guard the hive, you kind of help them out by using an entrance reducer. So you can see, like, if I have the entrance reducer here, here's the top of the hive, here's the bottom of the hive, and like only one bee can go through at a time. So they only have to guard that one area. And then when it gets a little bit warmer out and they have a little bit more bees in the colony, you turn it to this area. So then there's more bees can get through, but they can still control that area. And then I just recently, because my bees actually have been thriving already very well this year, I took this off. But so back to the skunks though, is that sometimes in the spring or even in the fall, because I'll start putting this in the fall when their numbers start to drop again heading into winter, to help the bees guard what they have. This will be knocked over and on the ground, and I know that a skunk has been by and trying to reach its little paws in there to get the bees itself. But other than that, chemicals is also something I'm very worried about. Please don't spray your lawns. I know people love lawns. I love flowers more than lawns, so I don't really care if my lawn is full of dandelions and violets, which are really good for the bees. But spraying for insects, especially mosquitoes, just because it's sprayed, says it's for mosquitoes, doesn't mean it's not killing basically every other insect around, like pollinators, or even people love lightning bugs. You're killing lightning bugs when you spray insecticide on your lawn too. So that's something that I really do worry about, that a neighbor or someone in the area or even the town might come over and spray our yard, or the surrounding area for mosquitoes or something, and I didn't know it and wasn't able to maybe close up our hive a bit, and it will kill the entire colony. Bees fly up to like 3 miles away to forage, so it is still a worry of mine, because you can't control what's going on. I can't control what's going on outside of my yard, let alone 3 miles away. So you just hope that there's not as many people using the chemicals too. Is honey antibacterial? It is to a point. I wouldn't say completely, but that is why our vet said to use it on her wound, because it's going to protect it and kind of keep anything from going into a wound type of thing. I would look more into that. I don't know the specifics of that, but honey is great. It has so many awesome uses. Are you concerned about the murder hornets? I am not, actually. For one, they haven't gotten to our area. They were just in Washington State. And two, it's not like it's an insane, huge swarm of them coming. If they do make it to our area, they might get to our hive, they might not. There's so many bees and native bees that they probably would attack somewhere else. So I would say right now it is not a concern of mine. And I also think it's hard because a lot of people read about these murder hornets and then started killing some of our native bees and wasps that look a little bit more tough and big, that actually don't even really hurt you at all. And those are getting killed off because of murder hornets. So please think before you actually kill something like that, and just let it fly away. Leave it alone and let it live. Yeah, skunks don't play around. They don't. Skunks, right? I feel bad because I feel like we attract more skunks to our yard. I feel bad for our neighbors. Thankfully, we've never been skunked, and my dog hasn't been skunked, and I don't think any of our neighbors have, but they certainly come around a little bit more because of the bees itself. Honey, in case anyone was wondering what honey actually is, it is basically bee barf. It's very tasty bee barf, in that they collect the pollen, they collect the nectar, they bring it back to the hive, they kind of process it, and they basically chew it up, spit it out into the honeycomb itself, and then cover it over. So honey isn't ready for us to eat until a good amount of the water, because a lot of it is water, is out of it. And once they cap the honeycomb, so like this, but there's an actual cap over where the hole is, and there's honey inside, and it's basically kind of fermenting. I take it back. It's not fermenting. It actually just you need to wait until the water level has gone down, because if you try to harvest the honey before the water level has gone down, you may end up with moldy honey later on. It's not going to stay. So another awesome benefit of honey is that it doesn't go bad. It may crystallize, which this one's not too it's kind of crystallized, where it looks, a little bit more solid than just the pure liquid, which I kind of like it that way. It's easier to spread, easier to scoop and just put in my tea or whatever I'm going to be using it for. But so basically, if your honey has started to mold, actually mold, it will turn white when it's crystallizing. So it may look kind of like mold, but it could just be crystallized sugar and honey. So if you don't wait for the proper time for harvesting, it will mold. Also, another good reason to get real local honey is that you're getting 100% honey. Some of the bigger manufacturers, they will supplement honey with sugar water, and that's not like as nutritious for you. It doesn't taste as good, and you're not getting the real thing. The way to kind of tell if something is kind of the fake sugar water mix versus real honey is if it is pouring out without any viscosity, like it is just completely liquid, like what comes in those little packets a lot of time if you're getting honey at like a coffee shop or something like that to add to your coffee or tea, that is going to have a mix of sugar water in it because the viscosity should be pretty thick. It can be liquid, but it's not going to be runny, if you will. So that's one way to tell if you have kind of 100% honey or if you had something that was kind of messed with sugar water. Do bees have any favorite flowers? Well, yes, they do. They have a lot of favorite flowers. Basically, anything that is pollinator friendly, bees love. So I have a native plant garden in my backyard, so the bees have a ton of stuff to choose from. But a couple good flowers, if you do want to attract bees, would be purple cone flowers or echinacea, wild bergamot or bee balm. Black-eyed Susans, cardinal flowers. They're all ones that are going to be native to Illinois, so that you're not just feeding the honeybees too. You're then feeding our native bees. You're feeding the butterflies. A lot of the monarchs are even milkweed. Anything that the bees can get at least a little pollen or a little nectar from, they will love. Another thing you could do for bees, even if you don't want to be a beekeeper, is put out little bee baths, but really it's like a bee water fountain for them, where you can do this in a bird bath size, or you could do even just a little bowl where you have maybe a little rocks, or some people even put those little glass marbly gem things that you can get at like a craft store, and you put a little bit of water in there, so they have a place to land and drink rather than a big bowl of water that they may fall into and may not get out of, or sometimes with the bird baths too. Where I try to put that in front of both of our hives right now is just kind of a little bit. It's a shallower bird bath with rocks and things, and I only fill it a little bit, and wanting to clean that out and refresh that whenever on a regular basis so that it doesn't get dirty or stagnant too. But that is something you can do to help your fellow bees. Bees also tend to, for some reason, to really like chlorinated water. I have two neighbors that have pools by me, and they tell me about my bees coming and taking a drink. Thankfully, they understand that the bees are not really a threat, and they're just there to hang out too. So they're actually happy that my bees are going to drink at their pools. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the scent of the chlorinated water or it just is cleaner to them, but they are attracted to that. So I have about 5 or 6 bird baths and bee fountains in my yard just to make sure that I'm giving them enough water. What else? Does anyone have, I guess, any other questions? I'm trying to think of any other bee facts that might be interesting too. As you might know, majority of a colony is going to be made of female bees, and they do all the work, and they actually have about 12 different jobs within their lifetime. So they kind of rotate probably every week and a half or week or half week or whatever it is in their life cycle. So there's the guard bees I was talking about with the entrance producers, making sure that no rogue enemy bees are trying to come in and steal their honey, or wasps or mice or anything like that, spiders. They have nurse bees, the ones that are taking care of the larvae and raising them and feeding them, and making sure that they're growing up right to be hatched later on. There's the kind of the bodyguard bees of the queen. She basically has a posse that will follow her around throughout the hive to make sure she's doing okay, which helps in finding her too, because when you have 60,000 bees in a hive and you're trying to, as a beekeeper, my job is just to make sure that they are healthy and happy and that she's doing her job. So you're trying to find her. You can kind of see the halo effect of which when she's crawling around a frame, that there's this just group of bees that's maybe coming with her. Also, you can buy, and I did this year, a queen that's been marked on the back with a paint color, so that you can spot her in this sea of bees as well. That this year is blue, and each year is a different color designated from whoever is kind of brokering your bees, so that you know which year they came in, and also that if your queen died and she's in there, but you're seeing another queen, which means your hive actually created a new queen to take over too. I'm a pretty hands-off beekeeper. I'm in the beginning of the year. I make sure they're happy. I make sure they're fed with some sugar syrup until a lot of more of the nectar comes out with the flowers that are blooming. And the same in the fall. I start to feed them some more sugar water then. But I just check in every few weeks to make sure that we don't have varroa mites, which are parasites that are not good for the bees. So that is another bee enemy that I would be worried about. Thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't had to deal with those yet, but it is a common issue and a problem. And just making sure that they're doing good, and I'll add on different boxes on top of the hive once they have things built out to make sure they have enough room, and basically let them do their thing and hang out. So I am not a beekeeper who is managing my hive to have the highest honey production. Like I said, I just take whatever we think that they can not is a little bit excess of what they need for them to survive the winter. So we're not in it for, we don't sell our honey. We actually we eat a lot of it ourselves, and then we give it as gifts to our friends and family. So we don't really like to sell it. Also, more so for me too, because once I start selling something, I'm going to shift focus, and then it turns not into a hobby and into kind of a job. So I want to just keep it in a hobby and then not have to worry about that aspect of it too. Let's see. Are wasps and the mean ones just as beneficial as the bees you keep? Yes, actually. Wasps, there's I don't know the number, but a very large number of species of bees, wasps, and hornets, and all of them do have some benefit to the ecosystem and aren't just, pardon my French, assholes and just there to sting you. You are not really part of their world. They're doing what they need to do, and then you just got in their way. But wasps, there's so many beautiful flowers and plants that aren't actually pollinated by bees, native or honeybees themselves. So we do need wasps to pollinate certain flowers, certain fruits. I can't remember which fruit it is, but it is only pollinated by a certain type of wasp, and we wouldn't have that without that wasp. And then there are other pollinators such as butterfly and even flies that they pollinate certain types of plants. Honeybees are pretty much generalists. They will go and try and eat whatever they can, depending on what it is. But there are benefits to hornets and wasps. Bees love the hummingbird feeders. I'm assuming it's safe for them to drink the sugar nectar. It is. So interesting, because I also have a hummingbird feeder as well. You do different recipes of the sugar water for hummingbirds and bees, but it's not bad for the bees to be drinking the hummingbird and oriole sugar water. The sugar water for hummingbirds is 4-to-1. That it's let's say 1 cup of sugar to 4 cups of water. For bees in the springtime, it's 1-to-1, so 1 cup of sugar for 1 cup of water. But in the fall, when you're trying to make sure that they are healthy and building up to, being able to overwinter, you are actually doing 2-to-1, 2 cups of sugar to 1 cup of water. I think that's true. It's more sugar in the fall time than in the springtime, so that you're making sure that they have as much food stored up as possible. Yeah, so unless there's any other last minute questions, I can probably just wrap up. I really appreciate everyone logging in and asking your questions and listening to me kind of bee nerd out. I could probably talk about beekeeping and bees and pollinators for days. So I appreciate that other people at least seem to be interested in this as well. I encourage you, even if you don't want to be beekeeping, to plant flowers, native flowers, that would be beneficial to the bees and beneficial to other pollinators in your yard, and to do the little bee water fountains too, so that they can maybe stop in your yard and take a drink. But yeah, if you have any other questions, feel free to shoot us a question even through our Facebook page or anything. I'd be happy to answer them. Um, let's see. I think we're about ready to wrap up. But so Prairie Food Co-op, we are closing in on 1,100 owners, and we are really looking to add as many owners as possible at this point in time. We're close to really making our food co-op a reality and building out that physical store. So if you have any questions about becoming an owner too, please, of course, shoot us any questions through our page, through our website, or through our email address too. We'd love to hear from you. And we're going to continue to try and do some other workshops, even some social distancing stuff like this, and maybe get things on calendar once we are ready and able to, maybe later this summer. But we will see. Thanks for joining. Bye.